In my younger days as a budding journalist, I was often captivated by the quotes from one individual, the manner in which these words were to the point, no malice, and at the same time left behind a feeling of trust and true leadership. For instance, there are no great limits to growth because there are no limits of human intelligence, imagination, and wonder. Here's another one that I recalled in the days following 9/11. Heroes may not be braver than anyone else, they're just braver 5 minutes longer. And one of my all-time favorites that speaks volumes in light of our current political course, and I quote, "It has been said that politics is the second oldest profession. I have learned that it bears a striking resemblance to the first," unquote. Our next guest heard these and many more words from the source, and who now takes us behind the curtain of the actor and the president, Ronald Reagan. In the new book, Lessons My Father Taught Me, The Strength, Integrity, and Faith of Ronald Reagan, it's a pleasure to welcome Michael Reagan back to the Hardline. Michael, thanks for joining us. It's always a pleasure, and those words, I'll bet you heard a lot more words, which I'll get to in a moment, from great things that your dad said. But because this book is based on lessons, Michael, what was the first lesson, the one that really stuck with you that your dad taught you?
Probably about love. I mean, I write in the book, and I actually have a letter in the book that he wrote to me on the occasion of my marriage, how important it was, what a man really needs to do. And it really was truly about love and loving the woman. And he says in the letter, you know, always remember when you come home at night, there's somebody on the other side of that door waiting for the sound of your footsteps. Boy, how true it is. When you think 20 million children will go to bed tonight without a father in the home because marriages just evaporate anymore. They change like you change your cell phone. And there's children out there who don't have a father. And even though my father and my mother were divorced, my father never really forgot that he had that first family of Maureen and myself, and did everything he could to spend as much time with us as possible. So if he taught me anything, he really taught me about love of family.
And I guess the biggest thing that I think about when you say that is, that's not a first lesson. Many times that, at least in this day and age, that fathers or parents teach children. They teach them, be strong, be this, be that, but they never really talk to them about love. And I think when people think of your dad, they think of the power, you know, the man who was there, the man's man, if you will. And they're going, love is not the first thing that comes to mind. It's amazing how he balanced everything and was able to put forth constantly an aura of being solid, truthful, a leader, but mixing that love in there. That's unique.
Yeah, he absolutely did. I mean, it really showed when he would, you know, on Saturdays, after my parents were divorced, he would come over and pick myself up, or myself and Maureen, or me and a friend, and drive us out to the ranch and regale us with story after story about America. He'd sing, you know, the songs from the Marine Corps and the Army and the Air Force and everyone else. And it was wonderful to hear those things and have him just regale you with these wonderful stories.
How did he impart the lessons to you, Michael? Because every father and everybody has a different way of doing things, and it's not as if they just come out in paper and you give it to somebody in a lesson form. How did he give you those lessons?
By example. I mean, simply by example. You know, he believed what he believed, and he lived that belief is what he did. No matter what was going on, he lived it. And so when you watch someone who says one thing and does something else, which I think happens a lot in the world we live in today, we are concerned with it. With my dad, there was never any concern because he was who he was. He was comfortable in his own skin. If he treated you one way, he treated me the same way. I was no different. You talk to anybody who met him at any event, and when he was going through the crowds and shaking hands, every one of them will tell you, when he shook my hand, he looked me in the eye, I swear I was his best friend. And that's the way he treated everybody, you know, in his life. And that's why he was able to get so many things accomplished. But it was by example that really we learned. And you got to remember that my sister Maureen, who passed away in 2001 from melanoma, and myself, I mean, we had 20 and 24 years respectively with my father going out to the ranch and swimming and doing chores and shooting ground squirrels and cutting firewood before he got into politics. And those are the years I remember, and I wanted to write about that because you always know him as the as the governor, as the president of the United States on the political side, but I want you to see the human side of Ronald Reagan, and it really connects ultimately with the political side.
Well, there's a great segue to this next question then. What do most people miss about your dad when they talk about him, when they think about him, when they think about who he was? What do they sometimes don't get?
I think there's a lot of people who, miss his leadership, but I'll tell you one thing. I'm walking out of a place where I was working out with Alec Baldwin a couple of years ago. That Alec Baldwin, yes. And I went up to him. I said, Mr. Baldwin, my name is Michael Reagan. Jane Wyman was my mother. And he looked at me and he said, why did you tell me Jane Wyman was your mother? I said, because I was fearful if I said Ronald Reagan was my father, you'd hit me and I'd have to die. And he kind of chuckled at me and what have you. And I shared with him that my dad had given Cameron, my son, the little bear from Hunt for Red October that was sitting next to him on the plane in the movie. And we talked about that. But he said, you know something? The other night I was having dinner with some friends, and I told them how much I missed your father. I said, you missed my father. You voted against him every time you got a chance. You campaigned against him every time you got a chance. What did you miss about my father? He said, you know what I've come to realize since he passed? Your father had a good soul. And what this world is missing today is that soul, and I wish we had it back. Alec Baldwin said that.
Did your father, maybe even because of that soul, because of that inner strength that he had, did he sometimes regret that other people didn't seem to get it? Because let's be honest, there's not a lot of respect for people today when it comes to your enemies, the people you don't like, or just the people that you oppose on a regular basis. I can see your dad maybe sometimes shaking his head going, my goodness, it's so easy if people would just understand it. Why don't they get it?
No one was his enemy. You go through life where no one is your enemy. It's pretty easy to go through life. That old 80-20 rule. If you're 20%, against me, you're not my enemy. We just find a way to, in fact, work together. And he carried that through all of his life, whether he was negotiating as the president of the Screen Actors Guild, or as governor of California, or within his own family, and what have you. This is the way he thought. There was no one in his life that was, in fact, his enemy. And because of that, he was able to get the largest tax break in American history passed by Tip O'Neill in 1981. He was able to come to terms with Mikhail Gorbachev. He was able to do these things because he didn't see people as enemies. He saw them as adversaries maybe, but he didn't think of them as enemies.
Yeah, I've been around the film industry and the television industry my entire adult life. And when your dad talked about working hard, but also work smart, I can also look at that to some of what goes on in the film industry, because you've got to work smart and you've got to work hard, but you've got to be intelligent about what you do. You've got to have integrity. You've got to have a little faith in yourself. It seems as if they all came together perfectly. He had the perfect storm of that film industry and government and working with people. It all just led to so many things.
It really led to a lot of things. He never let something bad that happened to him really stop him from moving forward. I remember him saying to me one time, and I think I write about in the book, he said, if you're an actor and you're in Oshkosh and you're not getting acting jobs, maybe it's time to leave Oshkosh. It's absolutely true. We have too many people today say, well, I want to be this in this spot, and they never get a job. They go to unemployment. And my dad's dad taught him, as my father taught me. I remember his father was driving him around Illinois when he was a child and telling his son, Ron, when they start paying you not to work, why work? And then my dad took me and drove me around and did the same thing with me, explained, when they start paying you not to work, why work? Well, look what's going on in the world that we live in today. How many people are not working or being paid not to work more money than, in fact, if they were working? Yep. And so I really learned these things from my father. I also learned, and this took time. It took time. When you have a setback, move forward.
Exactly.
So whether you're an actor who's not getting many jobs, it's okay to go to Las Vegas and be an opening act at the old ranch show.
And it doesn't hurt. If you fail, it's okay. It'll still teach you things going forward and make you a stronger person. I cannot recommend this book anymore. The book, once again, is Lessons My Father Taught Me, The Strength, Integrity, and Faith of Ronald Reagan. It's a marvelous book. I don't care what political stripe you are, you will learn an awful lot from this. Michael Reagan, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us. And stay with us. The Hardline continues. Now this promotional message. To America, he was the great communicator, but to Michael Reagan, he was Dad. Discover the strength, integrity, and faith of Ronald Reagan through the stories found in Michael Reagan's new best-selling book, Lessons My Father Taught Me. Inside Michael's stories exhibit Ronald Reagan's true character, his private life, the way he really was with his family. Lessons My Father Taught Me shows how Ronald Reagan lived life the way we all aspire to live. And the lessons Michael learned from his dad are written to both inspire and entertain. This compelling book belongs in the home of every conservative American, not only for its very personal look into the life of the nation's greatest conservative president, but for the lessons it shares that apply to everyday life. The book's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and bookstores everywhere. Get your copy today wherever books are sold. Learn more about the man, not just the president, not the actor, but the man and what he meant. Lessons My Father Taught Me, now available everywhere books are sold.